Hello, this is Eric with GameBall, the gaming trackball mouse. This getting started video is intended to give you a complete overview of the GameBall trackball and really how to get the most out of it. I divide the video into 5 sections. We will talk about the basics. I will cover system settings, maintenance, some advanced options, and then we'll talk about support. The video is a little bit long, but I do recommend you watch the whole video even if you're a trackball veteran, just again to get the most out of GameBall. So let's go ahead and get started with the basics. Okay, so let's talk about the basics of GameBall, and to a certain extent, the basics of trackballs in general. So I am right-handed, so as I go through this section, just know that I'm naturally going to put everything normally what I would do with right-handed, and as I talk about the buttons and that type of thing, just know that they're reversed if you're left-handed. I will, in the next section, as we get into system settings, show you how to switch between left-handed and right-handed, but for now, just know when I talk about a specific button that if you're left-handed, it's on the opposite side. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to try to answer 6 questions as we go through this section. The first question is, what is a trackball and how do they work? I'm going to spend some time on, the software and do I need to install any software? I'll answer the question, is GameBall only for gaming? I get asked that a lot. Where do I put my hands and fingers? Question number 4. And then question number 5, what does each button do? And then the last question I want to try to answer is, how long does it take to get used to a trackball? Very common question. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So what is a trackball? A trackball, I still consider a trackball mouse. Some people say, no, it's a trackball, a mouse is a mouse. That's up for debate. They basically do the same thing, is they are a computer input device that controls the cursor and has certain buttons that carry out certain functions. So how they do that is a little bit different. With your computer mouse, you're moving the entire unit, the sensors on the bottom, and reading the surface where you're moving the mouse. And the way a trackball works is there's a sensor inside there that emits light, and as you roll the ball around, it reads where your movements are and puts that into the system as far as moving your cursor. That's really the main difference. Is again, computer mouse, you're doing this, trackball, you're doing that. That's primarily the difference. Of course, the layout, the design, where you put your hands, fingers, all that fun stuff is different depending on the mouse itself. So trackballs were designed in the late 40s in the UK as part of a radar early warning system. And so they've been around for quite some time, even in some ways longer than a computer mouse. But again, they function the same way. There's a sensor in there that emits light onto the surface of the ball and picks up the ball movements itself. Overall, the trackball uses less space. You don't have to physically move it, less strain on your wrist and hands, that type of thing. That's why some people prefer it. This is a finger trackball. There are trackballs where you use the thumb. Of course, GameBall is a finger one. We want to make a thumb version, but we have to get this one off the ground first. So this is our first attempt, and our first one is a finger trackball, mainly because that's kind of what I wanted. And for gaming, I feel that an index finger is more accurate than a thumb, but I know there's others who would disagree with me on that one. So I want to do both, but we're starting with the finger one. So that's what a trackball mouse is. That's how it works. This is a USB device, so you plug this in and you are good to go. There's not much more than that. It's going to work on your Macintosh, most Macintosh OSs, Linux, Chrome, Android, all those things. Anything that you get plug in a USB and it should work. One of the reasons why it does that is there's no software for GameBall. It's all done via firmware. You plug it in, the system recognizes the buttons, and it interpolates as you press a button, sends that signal into the computer itself. So we don't have any software to install. That's our question number 2. There are some third-party optional software, which I will talk about in the advanced section, but for the majority of people, plug it in and you are done. Long-term, we would like to have the ability for customers to download firmware updates and upgrades. But at launch, we won't have that ability. But keep a look at our support page, and long-term vision is to have that so that if there are changes, enhancements, things like that, we'd give you the ability to actually go out there and flash the firmware on the GameBall unit. So no software installed. Question number 2. Question number 3, is it only for gaming? And it's a great gaming device. That's the focus of the design, but it's a very good everyday computer mouse trackball, driver that you can use for Excel, Windows, PowerPoint, CAD work, music editing, video editing, really whatever you need to do. Because it has a high-end sensor, high-end buttons, nice features like a vertical and a horizontal scroll, it really offers you an awful lot. There's a precision button. That's this guy right here if you're right-handed. And pressing that one time will go into a precision mode where the cursor will give you much finer movements. Pressing it again will go back to normal. So I'll talk about more about that one later. But a very capable everyday computer mouse. And I would even argue that it's better than most trackballs that have been on the market for a while, just because of the high-end components that went into this and the design, and again some of the features. And we'll talk about more of those once we get into the system settings section. Okay, so works for gaming. That's the main focus. However, everyday computer trackball work perfectly fine, and I think you'll be happy with the features and functions even when you're just scrolling the web. All right. So where do I put my hands and fingers? So for me, it's just a simple thing of just placing it down there. We really tried to stay as ergonomically correct as possible, not giving you a lot of weird finger strains and stresses, being able to have you reach all buttons easily, and being able to manipulate the ball easily as well. So, your left mouse button is this one right here. Again, if you're right-handed, if you're left-handed, this is your left mouse button. And what you try to do is when you're putting your thumb on there, I typically have my finger on the top of the ball. I normally do most of my activities with one finger, the index finger, but for more precise work or in some games, I'll actually use two fingers. But this is your left mouse button. This is there. That's generally where you want to guide your hand to start. So put your thumb on the left mouse button and your finger on the top. Depending on your hand size, you can scroll up or down the unit, or keep your hand up or down depending on the size of your fingers. I have a little bit larger hands. Some people may be further back. Some people might be a little bit more forward. And I'll talk about when we get into some software options, some of the button changes you can do if you decide, like if you have very, very small hands and you want to make this your left mouse button, there's some third-party software that will allow you to do that. But in general, you just kind of place your hand there. I typically use my ring finger for my right mouse button and my middle finger for scroll, and then my index finger to manipulate the cursor. Again, every once in a while, I will use two fingers on the cursor itself if I'm trying to do precise stuff, or in a game where I'm trying to line up, say, a sniper headshot or something like that. So left mouse button, middle mouse button. This is your back button. So if you're in a browser and you want to go back to your previous web page, that's your back button. This is your right mouse button. Your forward mouse button, again, if you're in a browser and you press that, it goes forward on the pages that you viewed. And this is your precision button. Press once, it goes into precision mode. Press again, it goes out of that precision mode. So that's the buttons. Again, that's right-handed configuration. Left-handed would be just the opposite. This button right here controls the lighting, and I'll show you the lighting once we get online. The settings button up here in the front controls your scroll mode as well as right and left-handed, and I'll show you that once we get online. And then both sides are your scrolls. The right side, if you're right-handed, is your vertical scroll. The left side, again, if you're right-handed, is your horizontal scroll. So that's all the buttons and kind of what they do. I'll show you those all in action here in a minute when we get into the system settings section. Okay, so last question, and this one I get asked a lot as well, is how long does it take to get used to a trackball? This will vary depending on your own experience and how dexterous you are with your fingers. I would say for most people, it's about 30 to 40 hours of usage before it feels natural. Now you might, it's a gradual thing, so you'll have, as you use it between those 30 and 40 hours, it'll get more and more comfortable. But I would say most people, especially if they've never used a trackball before, it's looking at about 30 to 40 hours. At first, it might feel really weird on how you put your finger there and how you manipulate the cursor and all that stuff and getting your settings right. But stick with it. Trust me, you'll like it. And you'll probably love it. And a lot of people, once they use a trackball, they won't go back to a regular mouse. So that's the 6 questions I wanted to answer in this section. So let's go ahead and move on to the system settings.
Okay, so now we're in the system settings section. So this will be a longer section, which I will spend some time going over the settings on the unit itself, as well as in the operating system. I'll talk about the lighting, switching between the various modes, spending a good amount of time on sensitivity, and then the touchpads and the various options there as well, and how you scroll with the device. So I did promise to show you between left-handed, right-handed pretty early on, so let me do that. So up here in the front, this little settings button is how you switch between the scroll modes. It's also how you switch between left-handed and right-handed. To switch between left-handed and right-handed, you press and hold for 3 seconds, and the lights will switch, or the lights will blink to show that you've switched modes. So let me show you that there. Let me press and hold, and it'll blink, and now it's in left-handed mode. And I can test that because this is normally your middle mouse button, but because it's now left-handed, this will be your precision button. So if I move the cursor, press it, move it again, it's barely going to move. So it's in that precision mode. So now I know it's set up in left-handed. And to go back, you just do the same thing. You press and hold, and it'll blink, and now it's in right-handed mode. So everything is reversed when you switch between those modes. Normally this is your vertical scroll and your horizontal scroll. When you switch, this is your vertical scroll and this is your horizontal scroll. All your buttons switch, that type of thing. So as I go through this video, I'm going to be showing you right-handed mode. Again, if you're left-handed, just know that it's going to be reversed for you as I go through this. So that's the how to switch between left-handed and right-handed. I will also be demonstrating a lot of this within Windows. Now, if you use a Mac or Linux or Chrome or Android, the settings, the hardware settings on the unit are going to be the same, but some of the configuration settings will be different depending on your operating system. They all can do what I'm going to be talking about, so there's nothing big there, but how you do it and the tool you use it in might be a little bit different. Okay, just know that I'll be using Windows for this demonstration. All right, so let's talk about the lighting because it's pretty important for your settings because if you noticed, the RGB lighting will blink when there's different settings. What we've done here is we control everything within firmware on the unit itself, so there's no software you have to install. So when we make a change, the RGB lighting will blink to signify that you're in different modes. So that's another advantage of having the RGB lighting other than the fact that it looks really cool. Okay, so there's a lighting button or a light button up near the top. It looks like a little light bulb or a little sun. And what you do is you just press that and it's going to cycle through the various colors. And there's even an off color. So that's the, what it looks like when it's off. And in the very first setting, if I click that and if I leave it there, you'll notice it starts to change colors. So this is the chameleon mode where it'll go through all the various colors, just kind of slowly rotating through each one. So that's kind of nice. And if you just want to go to a specific color and leave it there, that's what you do. Now, keep in mind that one thing that GameBall does do is all the settings that you have, whether it's right-handed, left-handed, the colors, all that will continue through reboots. So you don't need to go in and change all this every time you boot up the system. It will save all those settings for you. So you don't need to change left-handed, right-handed, and that type of thing, or if you have a particular color scheme. But if you are in Windows and for whatever reason you want to go, yellow or go green or whatever, you just kind of cycle through those if you want to match RGB lighting that you have on your desk, or if you're just in a particular mood and want to change the colors, you can. That's how you change the lighting. Now this is a limited edition version, which means it's a red ball, and the base color is red as well. So the limited edition versions will be sold first, and once they are sold out, they'll be gone. And then we will go to the standard edition, which will have a black ball and a black base, and that will be the edition moving forward. So some people wanted red, some people actually wanted blue, some people wanted the various colors, but black was the number one simply because it matches depending on whatever color scheme that you want. Black is fairly neutral there. We will be selling the various color balls at some point in a kit where you can get blue and green and all these different ones, but we just won't have that at launch, so look for that a little bit later on down the line. Okay, so that's the lighting. Now I did say that I will show you the buttons and just make sure you know how they work. So let me just go to a website here. This is just a website where you can test various functions. And again, I'm showing you in Windows, but the same thing is on Macintosh and others. So this is in a right-handed configuration. This is your left mouse button, your middle mouse button, your back button, and on the opposite side, your right mouse button. And again, this is the long button, so whether you press in the front or in the back, still your right mouse button. This is your forward button, and this is still your precision button or CPI, DPI, which I will talk about here in a moment. So those are the various buttons in a right-handed configuration. Let me go into the sensitivity settings. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. This is where the video gets a little bit long. I apologize, but this is an important section. So GameBall will have or has 5 sensitivity levels. And by sensitivity, I mean how fast and how far the cursor moves when you move the ball. It can be called CPI or DPI, counts per inch or dots per inch. Effectively, if I move the ball an inch, the higher the number is how many pixels it's going to move. So the lower the number, the slower; the higher the number, the faster. Like I mentioned, GameBall has 5 settings. It has 400 CPI, 800 CPI, which is the default, 1200, 2000, and 3000. And the way you change that is all done through the precision button by pressing and holding. And what's going to happen is the RGB lighting is going to blink number of times to correspond to what level you're at. For example, level 1 or 400 DPI is 1 blink, level 2 or 800 CPI is 2 blinks, and level 3 or 1200 CPI is 3 blinks, etc. So I think I'm on 3 at the moment. I'm going to press and hold, and it's going to blink for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's at 4. So it's at 2000 CPI at the moment. That's how fast the cursor moves. So this should take me to 5, which is the fastest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you notice here, the cursor moves very quick all over the screen. And if I press again, it's going to blink once and go back down to 400. And what I can do is you can actually press and hold it down, and it'll cycle through all the settings. I'm going to bypass 2 and go right to 3. There's 2, and there's 3. So that's level 3 or 1200 CPI. So that's the way you change the CPI, DPI levels on the unit itself. I would recommend that you control the settings through the unit as opposed to software settings on your operating system, just because this is hardware native settings through the sensor. It's not controlling it via software and doing anything funny. It's done directly off of the sensor, so it's going to be a little bit more precise and a little bit more accurate. So as much as possible, use that to get to a level that makes sense for you. Now, in Windows, and this goes for Mac and for Linux and the rest of them, you do have the ability, you go in, at least in Windows, it's through your mouse settings, and you can go to pointer options here. You do have the option of changing your pointer speed directly within the operating system. You can do this within Linux and Mac and others. I would recommend keeping this as neutral as possible, in the middle as possible, and then try to use your precision button to get to a level that you're comfortable, that you like. Now, if you can't get it quite right, sure, go ahead and tweak this up or down, until you get to a point that makes sense for you. But as much as possible, use your precision button to get to a CPI, DPI level that you're comfortable with. You might start at 400, you might start at 800, you might start at 1200, and then over time, as you get more comfortable, you might move up. Like I mentioned earlier, it could take 20 to 30, maybe as much as 40 hours for you to get comfortable with a trackball. And by starting with a lower sensitivity, that could be an easier progression for you. So again, you could change that over time, your comfort level, what games you might be playing. The different games usually have sensitivity settings within the game. So some games you might even want it to be even a little bit higher, and you can control that within the game. Okay, what I like to do, and I'm going to talk about acceleration here in a moment. For now, I would leave this check marked. I'm a believer in Windows or cursor acceleration on a trackball. There are some people who don't like it, don't recommend it, but I think for the majority of people, your overall experience in using a trackball will be much enhanced if you have some type of acceleration. Mac has acceleration, Linux has acceleration, Chrome has acceleration, Android they all have acceleration built in. So it's something that I would recommend. It means that you can move your cursor. The faster you move it, the further it'll move across the screen. Let me demonstrate that. So if you watch my finger here, if I just do a slow move, it's going to go about, a little over halfway of the screen. And if I go fast, you'll see that it zips all the way across the screen. So there's some acceleration going on there. So again, slow, it's only going to move so far. And if I was to go fast, it goes all the way across the screen. So that means that the faster you move the cursor, it's getting some level of acceleration. For most people who are watching this, just set this in the middle, turn on enhanced pointer precision, and then use 800 or 1200 CPI, and you'll be fine. If you want to play games like Valorant or CSGO and you want more precision and control in those higher, more competitive shooters, maybe you look for third-party software, and I will talk about that in the advanced section. But again, for the majority of people, I would say put this in the middle, turn this on, and you are good to go. If you want to read up more about acceleration and what it does and how it works, there's a ton of videos online. You can go to Reddit and read all sorts of articles on it. Just know that acceleration on a mouse is very different from acceleration on a trackball. And for certain reasons, it's not recommended in a lot of games for a gaming mouse, but those reasons don't necessarily always apply on a trackball. So for a trackball, I would recommend you have it on all the time. I think it's needed. Again, some people will disagree with me on that, and that's fine. It'll come down to preference there and kind of also depend on the games that you're playing. But I'd say for most people, set it in the middle here, turn it on, and you're good to go until you get comfortable with it. Okay, so that is your acceleration and how acceleration works. And an example of that, and I was going to show you this, is if you go into Paint or a program like Paint and just turn on your draw there, you're going to want to have the ability to draw a straight line, a fairly straight line. You're going to want to be able to draw a fairly square box, relatively easily. You're going to want to draw a somewhat round circle. You're going to want to be able to write your name. And and I'm going to go to 500 dp or 3000 dpi here, level 5. There's 4. And there's 5. Okay, now if I try to do those same things with this high sensitivity, you'll notice my lines aren't going to be as straight. My boxes are going to be a little bit off shape. Circles aren't going to be quite as round. And I'm going to have a real hard time drawing my name. Okay, now this is, and I've been using trackballs for years, and this is still a little bit too sensitive for me. So get it to a level that makes sense for you. I think for most people around 800 or 1200 would be fine. And if you want something beyond that and use a third-party acceleration, I actually set mine typically at level 4, but I use a third-party acceleration which also does a lot of deceleration on the low end as well. So I'm going to go back to level 3. One more demonstration. There's blink 1. There's blink 2. And there's blink 3. And again, what I'm doing is I'm just holding down the precision button over there. So that's a good way to test until you get comfortable with the setting. You want to be able to draw, fairly straight lines, a good square box, round circles, and your name. If you're all over the place here, you're probably going to want to bump down your sensitivity levels. Okay, so that's a good way to test and get to a level that makes sense for you. All right, so let's talk about the touchpad and how the touchpad works and the different modes there, because this is going to be a little bit different than what you might be used to with a typical scroll wheel. So this is a touchpad, a touch-sensitive pad. On the right side, if you're right-handed, is vertical. On the left side is your horizontal scroll. And the way the scroll works, let me go to a website. Just go to PC Gamer here. If I just drag my finger up or down, it's just going to scroll. And right now it's set in continuous scroll, which means if I scroll and hold, it's going to keep continually scrolling as far as or as long as I need it to, right? And that's the default. So if I just do one swipe, it does one, or if I do it and hold it, it's going to go through the entire document or the entire page. That's my preference. Some people like the linear scroll, and the way the linear scroll works, and let me switch to that, is it's this setting button up front, same one we use to switch handedness, but it's just one press. And the light's going to blink once or twice to signify what's moded in it. It just blinked twice, which shows that it's in linear mode. And what linear mode is it's just one, if I hold it, it doesn't continue to scroll. So it's just one swipe, one scroll. Similar to what you get in your typical scroll wheel on a mouse. So some people are more comfortable with that. Some people like the continuous. We found that most people in our testing like the continuous mode, but there are some people who definitely like more of a linear scroll, especially if you're in a game and you're using that to switch weapons. A continuous can sometimes switch too many weapons or switch too many times. So that's how you switch between continuous and linear and what those different modes are. I'm going to switch back to continuous. There we go. just one quick press. And now if I press and hold. So play with both those until you get to a level that makes sense for you. That's the horizontal works the same way. So if you're set up in continuous or linear, the horizontal scroll works the same way. This is just a website that demonstrates the horizontal scroll. Very handy in your video editing, software editing, or music editing software to have a horizontal scroll. This actually was a recommendation from the user community, from one of our people who've been following the project, and he said, we have the vertical over here because originally we had vertical on both sides, and he said, why not make this horizontal? And it was an amazing idea, so we went ahead and implemented it. I don't use it a whole lot. I use it like in Excel and a few other documents, but if you're doing video editing for one, or music editing, it can come in really handy for you. So that's your horizontal scroll, and again, I'm in the right-handed mode, and this is your vertical scroll over there. Let's go back to PC Gamer and show you how that works. Now, there's other scroll options you can use with a trackball. You can always grab the actual scroll bar itself and then use the wheel, hold the button down, and you can scroll that way, right? That works with a trackball. A lot of people prefer to scroll that way. Another way you can do it is you can press the middle mouse button. You notice the cursor changes, and then you can just roll the ball, and it'll scroll up or scroll down. And again, the further you move it, the further it's going to scroll. So with a trackball, you have quite a bit of different options as far as how you want to scroll. Again, you can use continuous or linear. You can go over here and grab the cursor and move it around, or you can press your middle mouse button and scroll that way. So really whatever works for you. I like continuous, but every once in a while, I'll go over here and do it this way, or I might even press the mouse button and do it that way, depending on what type of document I'm looking at. So those are your various scroll options, and that's how linear and continuous works and what they are, and then some of your non-scroll options. You do have one more thing within Windows. If you go back to the control panel, devices, mouse, additional mouse options, and go to your wheel, you can control how many times or how many lines each swipe scrolls. I think the default is 3. I like 4 on mine. So if you like linear but you want it to scroll more pages or more lines, you can move this number up. The higher the number, the further it's going to scroll. Like I said, I actually like 4, so I'm going to move that back. So that's the various scroll options and how horizontal and vertical work, and then some of the options you can use within Windows. So that's the scroll options. I covered the the sensitivity. I talked about the different buttons, the lighting, and all those things. Explained how you switch between left-handed and right-handed. So that's the system settings section. So now we're going to move on to the maintenance section. So let's go ahead and move on to that now.
Okay, so how do I maintain GameBall? Good news is it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, and you don't have to do it very often. So first off, care and cleaning. You don't really want to use any oils, greases, chemicals. You want to keep water directly off of the unit. No harsh cleaning agents, anything like that. So to clean it, it's pretty straightforward. I use these microfiber towels. You can also use like an eyeglass cleaning. You get these to clean your eyeglasses. Easiest way to do it is just take the ball out, give that a quick wipe, and again you can use a microfiber cloth. And then it's easier to use one of these to get down inside there. You can also use a cotton swab. And really what you want to do is clean the ceramic bearings down there of any dirt and debris, and then wipe the actual sensor down there. So in the very bottom middle is a sensor, and you want to give that a little bit of a clean. If there are a lot of debris in there, turn it upside down, shake it, and you'll have that stuff fall out. But give it a good clean. This is about maybe once a month, maybe a little bit more, depending on how much you use the device and your environment. But take the ball out, wipe that down, get in here, wipe this guy out a little bit. Mainly it's these contact points where the ball sits on those little bearings, and then clean that in. To clean the surface of it, you can dampen a cloth, pre-dampen a cloth, and then wipe this down. You don't want to get any water or any chemicals or cleaning agents directly on it, and just try to use just water if you can, and then just wipe this down. What you'll notice is, in fact, you'll see it right there, is there's a little bit of buildup of some grime from my fingers. So you just kind of wipe that, and you just kind of wipe that away. Don't even need any water for that. I also use this spot an awful lot, so just kind of wipe that. So when it comes to cleaning, that's really about it. The ball should always move smoothly. Any trackball, you should be able to just spin it and it should continue to move on its own. Shouldn't have too much resistance or scratching noises. If you feel the need to use an oil, the only one I would recommend is the oils that you produce yourself. On your forehead and around your nose is an oil that you naturally secrete. And I actually, you can take this and rub it on your forehead, rub it next to your nose, like that crease between your nose and your cheek, and that'll put a little bit of natural oil on there. I typically don't do that. It doesn't really need it. It rolls pretty smoothly on its own. But if you feel the need to use some type of oil, I would recommend that one. But what I found is oil naturally attracts more dirt and debris. So if you do use some type of oil, again, the only one I would really recommend is the one that, off your forehead. I think it's called sebum oil. If you do feel the need to use that one, just know that you'll probably end up cleaning the unit a little bit more than normal. So that's really just care and maintenance. Again, avoid a real harsh or any real cleaning agents, any chemicals, anything like that. You could take the paint off, you could scratch it, you could damage it in a lot of different ways. A nice, easy rubbing, cleaning here and there is really all you need. So that's the maintenance for GameBall, and let's go on and move on to the advanced section.
So let's talk about the advanced settings for GameBall. I'll talk about some of the third-party software that you may want to use depending on your needs, and then some things that we might be able to offer with firmware a little bit down the line. So first off, I've mentioned that there may become a time where you need or may want to remap your keys. I talked about how if you have really small hands, you may want this to be your left mouse button, and so that your finger and thumb are a little bit closer, further up on the game ball. So you might want to remap that to your left mouse button. You may have different needs depending on your hand. Like I said, I've had people ask me that, okay, if I use this as thumb, can I remap these keys? Whatever. You might want to remap these keys. The one program I would recommend, at least within Windows, there is a Mac version. There's similar versions within Linux and others, but for Windows it's called Xmouse, and this is a remapping software. So it's done through software. So this is only going to work on the computer that you have it installed on, but it allows you to remap all your keys in whatever way you want. Now it won't remap your scroll pads and the buttons on there and the precision button or the CPI DPI button, but allow you to remap all your normal mouse buttons, so your back forward button into your left and right and whatever else you might want there. I've used it before. It's very easy to use, very intuitive. It's free. You just install it, run it, and very handy. So if you're looking to remap your keys, this is the one I would recommend within Windows. Now for acceleration, I mentioned raw accel, or raw accel is the one that I use. And the way raw accel works, and please just don't take my settings and copy it. I turned off Windows acceleration and I have raw accel turned on. This just is a small little application I turn on. I use it all the time. It offers de-acceleration and acceleration. I'm in Windows level or GameBall level 4, which is 2000 CPI, and I have it set to a 0.18 multiplier on the low end, and then different acceleration. So the key here is this is a more linear acceleration as opposed to the random jumps, inconsistent jumps you get within the Windows acceleration. So this offers you a more consistent and more customizable acceleration experience. There are similar programs and similar things you can do in Mac and Linux. Some of those actually natively handle it much better than Windows does. So you can look for those. But this allows you, again, to have a more customizable linear experience for your acceleration. Like I mentioned before, I'm a big believer in acceleration on trackballs. One thing to keep in mind is, if you want to go out and watch YouTube videos on acceleration, keep in mind that gaming mice versus trackballs are different. There's some functionality difference in the way that they handle acceleration and why you'd want to use it versus not use it on a mouse versus a trackball. So keep that in mind. But still, a good 80 to 90% of it's going to apply to you. So you can go out there and watch. But over the last few years, there's been a lot more people who have experimented and explored the use of acceleration and found that with the right acceleration software, it really benefits them. It gives them the benefits of the fine movements on the low end and the ability to quickly jump around the screen. So for a game like Valorant or CSGO, you have those quick flicks that you can do in addition to those fine movements for headshots and things. So it's something I would recommend if you really want to get into a competitive shooter. It will depend on the shooter. If you're using Battlefield or Quake, you might not want much acceleration, if at any. But some of those games, again, like Valorant or CS:GO or ones like that, you probably would want to use. But come down to preference, read up on it, see if it's something that you might like. If you do want to use one for Windows, this is one that I would recommend, which is RawXL, and you can find that online. This one's on GitHub. And Xmouse, you can find it all over the web as far as being able to download that. So those are the third-party applications that I would recommend for GameBall. There may be other ones that I recommend later or have links to on our support page, but those are the two that I would possibly recommend, depending again on what your needs are. So for firmware changes, long term, what we'd like to do for GameBall is offer users the ability to flash or update the firmware, especially as we have changes, enhancements, that type of things. We want to be able to have users do that. We can do it now internally, but we want to offer users that same ability. So look for that down the road. Another thing we've talked about, now whether or not we get there or not, I can't say, is giving the user the ability to actually edit the firmware. That may or may not happen, but that would obviously be an advanced feature and something that would be down the line. So look for those things on the support page as time goes by for GameBall, and we'll be posting that on the support page if we do in fact have firmware customizable ability and software that you can download for that. But those would be advanced options. Again, I wouldn't recommend those for most people. I think out of the box experience for people is going to be fine, but I know some people really want to fully customize and maybe change and do some other interface for the lighting and any number of things that I know other trackballs and other mice can do. So look for that in the future, or possibly look for that in the future. So that's the advanced section. Coming up next is the support section. So let's go ahead and move on to that.
Okay, welcome back. So let's talk about support. So if you find yourself needing additional support for GameBall, please go to our website. The link is in the description below, but it's www.gamingtrackball.com. On there you'll find a support page. That support page will have links to how to contact us, the user manual, all sorts of things to get additional help. So please visit that. Things may have changed from the time we videotaped this video, so the latest information is always on that support page. So please visit that whenever you need additional help. I do want to say thank you for watching the video today. It was a little bit long, but hopefully it gave you a better idea of how to configure, set up, and get the most out of the GameBall trackball. We've spent 5 years on this thing. We put a lot of heart into the design. We're really happy with it, and we hope you like it as well. So thank you again for watching the video, and we will talk to you soon.